I thought I'd just begin with telling you a little bit about what I do, because there are different kinds of psychologists. And the Dr. Phil type are those who are trained to do psychotherapy. They see patients, people who are in need of help for depression or all sorts of problems. And that's a really important kind of psychologist, and it takes a special kind of person to do it, I think. But that doesn't happen to be my profession. I am a different kind of psychologist, what we call research psychologists. Sometimes we think there ought to be another name for what we do, like behavioral scientist, something like that. I don't do therapy, I do research. I do experiments where we try to figure out how the mind works, what helps people more broadly by doing studies where we try out things, see if they help people or not, and then recommend interventions or programs. Here's another question for you. What makes someone your age successful? So someone who is actually going to really succeed. Define success however you want, educational or just a well-rounded, happy person. But what sort of things are actually going to determine who succeeds and who doesn't? What was that? Set goals, okay. Mm-hmm. Good. Anybody else? Optimism, good. Yeah.
Money.
Okay, thank you for that. That takes money can be important.
Having a positive attitude.
I'm sorry? A positive attitude. Well, some of you are stealing my talk, so hold on here. But yeah, I think there are some common answers to this, and I think one answer that I think we often think about is that people are. Some people have certain kinds of talents and others don't. So stuff you're born with, maybe, and this doesn't just apply to academics, of course, but think of musical ability or athletic talent. Some of us have more of it than others. That's one common theory. So you got it or you don't. Another approach is that some of us have more advantages than others. So money, for example, that some of us are born in the circumstances that give us advantages that other people don't have. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you those aren't true, but I want to suggest they're not the full story. Let's just imagine two students, maybe at your school, and they both are doing about the same in school, but they have very different attitudes or stories, if you will. Student number one says, I don't think I have much of a future because times are tough, economically times are tough, my school funding keeps dropping. Things just aren't going that well. Student number two is more of an optimist and says, yes, it's true, times are tough, but someone's got to succeed, so why not me? I think I can do it if I try. Now, the thing about these stories is, notice that I haven't told you which story is right or wrong, because I don't think that's what really matters, is not the right or wrongness of those stories, but more what they lead to. That the person with the more optimistic story is the one who's going to try harder, and particularly when things get a little rough. So let's say both these students encounter a bump in the road. Maybe they're taking a difficult class. Maybe they're a musician, but they don't make an ensemble in school or whatever. And how are they going to react? Well, the pessimist is going to give up and say, this proves it that I don't have what it takes. Whereas the optimist is going to try harder and see what else he or she can do to overcome that. So a lot of research in psychology has begun to address how we can change those stories. Could we take that pessimist and turn him or her into more of an optimist? And it's not always easy, but I think there are programs and writing techniques and things we can do to change our attitude and be optimistic, particularly when times get rough and you encounter a bump in the road. The true optimist goes over that bump or finds a way around it rather than turning around and going home. So optimism is good in that sense. Having a sense of purpose. I don't think this is going to come as that much of a surprise to you that's part of a good story. Goals to work for. I think someone mentioned that actually as part of what it means to have a good attitude is to set goals for yourself and work hard towards them. Finding something you love to do. So having a purpose in the sense of of finding some activity that you really, really enjoy. Now, I remember what it was like at your age, maybe not always that clearly, but I know when I was around that age, I really didn't know what I was interested in. I didn't have that many passions. Sure, I like some things. I like sports. I like some of my classes in school. But I think just finding something that you really enjoy is really important. If we believe that our success is based on what we're born with, what's a logical conclusion if we don't do well? I must not have it. I guess I don't have that ability, so I might as well give up. Same in athletics. If you really want to be a talented athlete and you think it's all a matter of just skill, when you struggle and don't do well, the logical assumption is you don't have that skill, so you might as well switch to joining the band or something. There's a different theory that I think is actually more accurate, and that is that, again, of course, talent matters, but not nearly as much as we think in the sense of something we're born with. Rather, it's something we work on and develop. Talent is better thought of as a muscle that gets stronger with exercise, and if we don't exercise it, it's going to wither. But if we really try and exercise it, it will do well. Is a principle that we psychologists like to talk about that we call do good, be good. Now, by that I mean that if we want to change the way we view ourselves, interestingly, ironically, it's often best to change our behavior first. Don't just sit in our armchairs trying to change our story, but actually go out and change what you do. Because that can actually, then our stories follow from that. So if you're feeling disengaged, get engaged. Do some volunteer work. You're not sure what your passion is? Try stuff out. Do internships, volunteer. Find someone who is doing something you like or think you might like and join them. We think of these stories as things inside our heads, and they are, but they also grow in a social context. Namely, in the people we hang out with often share stories. The stories of our group are as important as the stories of us as individuals, I think. And again, I think particularly people at your age, you can only take so much, I assume, of hearing someone like me stand up and lecture at you about this. Often it's your peers that matter more than anything else. And so there's a lesson here, is hang out with other people with good stories. As simple as that sounds, I think that there is a power to the group, and having people who think highly of themselves and have good stories, hang out with those folks, and that can be a good thing too. Not mandatory, but think about trying this on your own if you want. One is called the best possible selves writing exercise. And what you do is simply, maybe in the evening before you go to bed, take out some paper, and for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 3 or 4 nights in a row, I'll read you some instructions that have been used here. It's think about your life in the future and imagine that everything has gone as well as it possibly could. You have worked hard and succeeded at accomplishing all of your life goals. How did you get there? What did you do to accomplish this? Just this simple little exercise of fleshing out who you might be in the future, 5 years, 10 years from now, imagining it, and not just imagining it, but imagining how you got there, what you had to do to accomplish it, how you worked hard to accomplish it, can be a valuable exercise just to give us something to work for. There's 3 words I've invented to try to summarize everything I've said, a little motto, and that is persist, believe, and achieve. Persist. Work hard at it. Again, I'm sure this isn't new to you to have someone tell you that hard work pays off. You got to persist. And the more we do that, the more we believe in ourselves. The more we have some success, we work hard, and things go better. We can believe we can do it, and believe is meant to capture having goals for our future, believing in ourselves. And then achieve, the more we achieve, it's kind of a circular thing. The more we achieve, the more we can persist, the more we believe in ourselves. Okay, I will stop there and happy to answer any questions you might have.
So what do they make you you talk about in redirect is the need for like a scientific experiment on certain programs. So how do you balance that need for like an effective experiment with the program that needs to be instituted immediately?
That's a really good question. Thank you. So you've actually read the book. Thank you. This is something that in my household we talk about a lot because it just so happens my wife is an elected official in Charlottesville. She's a city council member. So she's got people coming to her, we need solutions right now to these problems. That you're right, there's a pressure there we got to find out if it works. I think partly that's the job of my profession, to be testing things all the time. To get researchers to constantly be trying things so that you can go to a shelf and pick off a program that you know works. But if there isn't a program that's developed, then I think it's possible to implement and test at the same time. The only thing, I'll give you a specific example. So in Charlottesville, as in most communities, we have a Boys and Girls Club. And they started a summer program to try to help the dip in achievement that often happens over the summer when kids are out of school. They took at-risk kids, gave them a summer program, and found that their test scores seemed not to have dropped. And I am a little bit of a professional skeptic because if you know anything about experimental design, that's good, but there wasn't a control group. There wasn't a group of kids who didn't get the program. So we can't be absolutely sure that the success was due to the program or something else. So in that case, there's some tough choices. Now, it would be simple if there were more people who wanted to do the program than they had spots, because then you randomly select from them and you have a natural control group. You track the kids who got in, you track the kids who did not get in. But what if there aren't enough kids? Then you have a tough choice. Do I leave some untreated as my control group and do the actual study? And that means some kids may not get the benefit from this. As you know from my book, I tend to be pretty hardcore about this. I do think we need those control groups because it's the only way we'll find out if things work. And unfortunately, we found out that some programs backfire and do more harm than good, and we need to know that. So always have that control group, even if you're implementing something right away. Yeah?
In the Baby Einstein study, you found that parents had a great influence on their kids, like even more so than the video. In today's society especially, I know parents tend to blame society for like their kids' failures. How much influence do you think that a parent has on a kid, on teens especially?
You guys are asking great questions. So it was, what influence do parents really have? And there's been a debate about this in psychology, and the pendulum goes back and forth. At one extreme, a few years ago, there was an article where this woman psychologist wrote that parents make hardly any difference. That as long as we're not abusing our kids, parents don't matter. It's what matters is their peers and what they're born with. Well, that's way too extreme. I'm in the camp that parents do matter. And I think there's more and more research that supports this. And the example you point to of teaching language ability, I think is a good one. That there's studies that simply count the number of words that parents say to their kids when the kids are toddlers. And it varies a lot from family to family. Some parents talk to their kids a lot more than others. And the more you talk to a kid, the faster he or she will learn to talk, and the bigger vocabulary he or she will have. And so even something as simple as that is just verbalizing and talking is hugely important. And from there on up, so I'm in the parents matter camp. Yeah?
How does the statistical analysis, when you do some of your experiments, really and truly effectively rule out important factors like socioeconomic status, educational background, home life, and so you can make conclusions based on just the program's effectiveness?
Well, another great question, thank you. It's tough, but there is a magical thing called random assignment that does wonders. And so I'll go back to my example of whether the Boys and Girls Club program was helping these kids. Say we took two groups of kids and we put some in that program and some in a control group that didn't do the program. And then we wanted to compare how they did academically. You're exactly right that we'd have to be concerned with all sorts of reasons why one group might do well and one group might not. Maybe one group comes from higher socioeconomic homes, or maybe one group has more music training, or one group, they could differ in any sorts of ways. And the way around that is by randomly assigning them. So if we just flip a coin, and so you go into one group and someone else goes into another one, and the groups are relatively large, then just by chance, things are going to equal out. So there'll be as many musicians in one group as the other, as many people from different economic backgrounds in one group or the other. So it's not always easy to accomplish that, but you got to have that randomness so that you equalize all those background factors.
We talk about parents shaping their kids' behaviors. How about kids who've grown up in this area, who maybe for the past 10 or 20 years have had an economic downturn and have heard nothing but negative things from their parents? How can the kids go about redirecting their parents' attitudes?
Interesting. Showing them they're wrong, I think. And again, I think being optimistic yourself, getting involved in your community, becoming active in some way, politically, community service, and just showing that you can do well in school, and that showing them their story, that interpretation's wrong, is the best thing you can do, I think.